All right, let's unpack a story that starts with a simple favor and ends in a full-blown marital argument. It's a classic case of suburban soccer drama, but with a twist that makes you question, where does being a helpful neighbor end and where does family law begin? Buckle up. So, our narrator, let's call him Mark, is a soccer dad. His wife is out of town, but the weekly kid shuttle must go on. His wife and another mom, Dana, have a well-oiled carpool system. Dana's a single mom. They're friends, it works. This time, Mark's on duty. His task, drive Dana's son to the game. Simple. In the past, after games, the kid would either come back to Mark's house to get picked up by Dana or arrangements were clear, no problem. Now, here's where the plot thickens. At the end of this particular game, a familiar face shows up. Jay, Dana's ex-husband, the kid's actual father. Mark knows him from back in the day when they were still a couple. He's heard the post-divorce horror stories from his wife, of course. The messy, bitter, he did this, she did that kind of stuff that comes with a split. But personally, Mark has never had an issue with the guy. He's seen him during his custody time, everything seemed normal, so Jay arrives. And he's not alone. Dana's mother, the kid's grandmother, is also there, having a casual chat with her ex-son-in-law. Mark walks over, sees the father and the grandmother together with the child. His brain does a perfectly logical calculation. Father plus grandmother plus kid equals kid is probably going home with family. He interrupts the chat just to confirm. Hey Jay, are you taking him home? Jay says yes. The grandmother doesn't object. Not a word of, no wait, I'm taking him. In fact, she just asks Mark to let her daughter, Dana, know that her phone died. So, in Mark's mind, the handoff is clear. The father said he's taking him. The grandmother who lives with the kid is right there and isn't correcting it. His job as the chauffeur is done. Crisis averted, kid with family. He goes home. And that's when the real game begins. His wife is back, and she is absolutely furious. Irate. She says, Mark, let the kid go home with an abuser. She accuses him of being irresponsible, of potentially putting the child in danger, of facilitating a kidnapping. Let that word sink in. Kidnapping. Because he let the child go with his own father in the presence of his grandmother. Mark is blindsided. He thought he was doing a solid, and now he's being treated like he committed a felony over a carpool. So, Mark does what any reasonable person would do in the age of technology. He goes straight to the source. He messages Dana, the mother, and asks point blank, "Did I mess up?" And her response is anticlimactic. No, everything was fine. His dad just came to say hi. He went home with his grandma. So, the kid was never in danger. The father wasn't spiriting him away. The grandmother, who was physically present the entire time, was the planned ride. All that panic, all that anger from his wife, was based on a misunderstanding in a chain of communication that broke down the moment the grandmother's phone died. This forces us to dissect two levels of this conflict. Level 1, the practical. As the stand-in driver, what was Mark's actual responsibility? Was he a babysitter or a taxi service? His job was to get the child from point A, home, to point B, the game. The return trip was always meant to be handled by the family. He saw 2 verified family members, one of whom is a legal parent, and got verbal confirmation. The grandmother, the usual guardian, didn't object. In the heat of the moment, with a dead phone causing an information blackout, he made a call based on the evidence before him. From a pure logistics standpoint, it's hard to call him negligent, but level 2 is where it gets murky. the emotional and reputational minefield. His wife had preloaded him with information. Terrible things about the ex. Now, we have to read between the lines of an AITA post. Terrible things and abuser are heavy words. If the wife meant an abuser of her, that's a devastating relational issue, but it doesn't automatically translate to a danger to the child, especially if courts have granted custody time. If she meant an abuser of the child, that's a nuclear-level allegation that changes everything. But here's the critical detail Mark provides in his edit. Based on what's been shared with me, he hasn't been accused of any abuse toward the kids. This is the legal and moral fault line. If there's a court order or a known danger to the child, then all bets are off. But if it's interpersonal conflict between ex-spouses, that's a different category. Mark was stuck trying to triangulate between his wife's emotional truth, the legal reality of custody, and the live situation in front of him. The core of his wife's anger might not really be about Jay at all. It might be about a fundamental mismatch in risk assessment and trust. She lives with the knowledge of what the ex put her friend through. To her, Jay is not just the dad. He's a threat vector. She expected Mark to see him through that same lens, to treat him with extreme caution, to double and triple check with Dana directly, dead phone or not. She expected her husband to be an extension of her own protective instincts for her friend. Mark, operating more on a logic and evidence basis, saw a parent and a grandparent and made a practical decision. It was a collision of two different operating systems. So, where does the verdict land? The beauty, and frustration of this story is that both sides have a point rooted in care. Mark's point, I used my best judgment with the information available to keep the child within his family circle, and no harm occurred. The wife's point, when it comes to children, especially in fraught divorced situations, you can't be too careful. You must err on the side of the protective protocol, even if it seems overly cautious. But if we're judging strictly the AITA question, was I wrong for leaving the child with his actual parent and grandparent based on their confirmation? The answer leans heavily toward no. He was not the asshole. He was a volunteer placed in an ambiguous spot who made a reasonable, if imperfect, call. The system failed because a phone died. The real failure was a lack of a clear what-if plan communicated to all backup drivers. But this is where I turn it over to you, because this is the kind of dilemma that splits a room. So let's have the debate right here. I want to see two camps in the comments. Team Practical. Mark. If you think Mark did the best he could with the live information and isn't to blame for the communication breakdown, type Team Logic. Team Protective Wife. If you believe that when there's known bad blood, you default to extreme caution and never hand off a child without explicit, direct confirmation from the primary custodian, type Team Safety. Let's see which principle wins the day. And while you're down there wrestling with that moral calculus, hit the like button if you've ever been caught in the crossfire of someone else's co-parenting drama. It lets the algorithm know you're here for these nuanced, real-life puzzles. If you want more deep dives into the messy, complicated, and surprisingly tense world of everyday ethics, you need to subscribe. Hit that button and ring the bell, because coming up next, we're dissecting a story that will make your head spin. A woman discovers her neighbor has been secretly building a replica of her house in his backyard. Is it a bizarre tribute, a case of identity theft, or the world's most elaborate zoning violation? You won't believe the twist. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for listening, for thinking, and for being part of this community. Remember, No good deed goes unargued about. See you in the next one.